Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me on today on this Election Tuesday, Dan Wos. Dan, of course, of the Loaded Mic program. And Dan, thanks for coming along for the ride today, man.
Anytime, Paul. You know that. We always have a good time. Thank you.
Let's get started. Of course, the big news today is happening as we speak, and that is it is Election Day today. As I was pushing buttons to go live, the polls closed in Kentucky. Everywhere else in the nation, you've got somewhere between an hour and a few and several hours left to vote. If you're in Hawaii, I think you probably have 4 or 5 hours left to vote. But in Oregon, and Oregon's a special case because I think Oregon is all mail-in votes. There is no in-person voting in Oregon. But I think you would agree with me, Dan, if you haven't voted yet and you're a gun owner, you need to go out, you need to vote, you need to make your voice heard today.
Yeah, I know. We never want you to stop watching the show, but in this case, take your phone with you. You can watch a show on the road because we got a lot of great things to talk about, but it's really important that you get out and vote right now. So,
yes. Well, and not only that, the open secret, you can come back and watch the video.
That's true.
Anytime. Matter of fact, I encourage you, after you're done today, watch it again. There may be something you missed. So, but yeah, if you have not voted yet, please do go vote. And if you're catching this on podcast, I will get this released before all the polls close. And if there are still polls open where you're at, please do get out and vote. The big news today as it relates to gun rights, Dan, U.S. District Judge Glenn Suddaby has halted enforcement of many aspects of New York's Concealed Carry Improvement Act, from the good moral character requirement to the state's designation of a host of publicly accessible places as sensitive locations off limits to concealed carry holders. He issued a 184-page order. Cam Edwards over at Bearing Arms says it's mostly great news for gun owners, but he's still allowing several components of the CCIA to remain in place, like the requirement that applicants provide a list of 4 character references, take part in an in-person meeting with law enforcement, and provide proof of 18 hours of training. This all before the shall issue permit is issued. What's your take, man? It looks like the greatest majority of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act is now gone. What's your take, Dan?
Yeah, well, I want to see it all gone, and I think we will at a certain point. There's still, a lot of these places where appointed Governor Hochul is trying to restrict gun ownership. A lot of so-called sensitive locations, and there's still a lot of bad stuff. There's also an 18-hour course. Now it's a 16-hour mandatory course, in-person course, and then there's a 2-hour on range course. So this is all. These courses are built based on what the state of New York, the legislature, put together with things that they decided that they needed to see in this course. People who typically don't know anything about firearms or concealed carry and things like that. So we're being forced into this. Gun Owners of America had won a case. State of New York appealed it, and as far as I know, right now we're still waiting on a 3-judge panel to hear the appeal. My guess is that her appeal will get shot down, and this case will be in the state of a restraining order. This law, the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, will be in the state of a restraining order. At which point we have to give time for the big lawsuits to come in and kill it, because that's what we're going to do. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of cases already in place, ready to go, But we're still dealing with some remnants of this Concealed Carry Improvement Act. Some of them may have gotten shot down or stayed or whatever, but regardless, it's a mess right now, and gun owners in New York really don't know what we can and cannot do all the time. It's very confusing, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to wipe the whole thing out.
Well, I know Second Amendment Foundation, and I know Gun Owners of America, and I think Firearms Policy Coalition all have lawsuits in New York, specifically dealing with things like the sensitive places where you cannot carry. And that is part of what Sotheby's struck down yesterday. So
they struck down religious places of worship too, where Hochul had that all blocked up. And the big thing that really bothers, I think, a lot of gun owners is that Hochul deemed every private business gun-free unless the private business owner was to put up a sign saying that guns are welcome. Now, typically, business owners aren't going to go out of their way to put a sign up that says guns are welcome, So it really kind of puts a blanket over private businesses. And this is something where, she made the decision that private business owners are perfectly capable of making themselves, whether or not they want guns in their private business. But Hochul decided that she knew better than the private business owners, and she made the decision for them. So this is totally unconstitutional stuff. We all know that, but that's that's what we're dealing with. So we're going to wipe it out, I'm sure.
And
go ahead.
That's quite often, and I don't like to characterize. I do it more often when I talk to you than when I talk to anybody else, but quite often that's the Democrat parties. They know better than you what is good for you, so they're going to make you do what they say. There are areas Republicans do that as well, but it seems to be a drug for the Democrats. They want to rule everything about your life.
Well, I always said that, we as human beings tend to have control. Sometimes we have control strategies and where it makes us feel comfortable. Maybe it's the things you have on your desk and you want things in a certain way. Maybe it makes it more convenient. It makes it easier for you to kind of go about your life if you have things kind of controlled in a way that makes your environment suitable for you. The difference between what I'm finding is the difference between conservatives and liberals is that conservatives tend to want, if there are any control issues or strategies, they tend to control things, whereas the liberals tend to control people. And to them, they always seem that every policy that they put out is more government, more rules, more regulations, more laws that control people. And somehow it seems like they get off on that. I don't know why, but it seems that way anyway. So we have to push back on that because they don't seem to understand that in America, the people are free to do what they want, but they somehow don't like that idea.
Now, when I was growing up, one of the popular sayings was "Do what you want. It's a free country." At that point, it was, and in many ways still is, depending on where you live in the country. But yeah, we were built on individualism. The entire nation was built on individualism, and for states like New York, New Jersey, California to say, no, you cannot do that. You do not have the right to defend yourself. You must give up to the criminal. That's not individualism.
No. I think this election is going to show that people don't like that anymore. They've had enough of that.
I think you're right. And I was looking, as we were getting ready to go live, I was looking, and I'm going to bring this up, I was looking at Real Clear Politics. As I said, only one state has polls closed, and we don't have returns yet because the polls have only been closed for 10 minutes. But Real Clear Politics is projecting, as of 5:10 p.m. Central Time, that when everything is wrapped up, they're projecting 53 Republicans in the Senate, 47 Democrats in the Senate. They're expecting Republican pickups in Nevada, Georgia, and Arizona. And let me go look there. And if you think that's good news, I got more coming for you here in just a second. Let me take a look at their governor's rate, their governor's projection. They are projecting right now that we're going to have 20 Democratic governors, 30 Republican governors when tonight is over with. They're expecting Wisconsin, Nevada, Michigan, and Kansas to go red where they had previously not been. Unfortunately, Dan, they still see New York as blue. That's them.
I'm not surprised. And you know what? There's a lot of talk about Zeldin taking that seat. And we've been rallying for him pretty hard, and I think he's got a good chance from what I understand. I'm not getting my hopes up, but I'm somewhat hopeful. So, it would be fantastic for New York. I suppose even if he doesn't, this has got to put a scare in the Democrats that we Republicans have gotten so close in a state like New York. I'm still going to stay positive, though. I'm still going to cheer him on. I think he's got a good chance.
Well, and let me put a little bit more hope into everybody here. And let me remind everybody, if you want to get your comments in, comment on either the live Facebook or YouTube feed, and we'll get your comments on the air. If you're catching us anywhere else, go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet. Excuse me. I want to go to their final projection right now, and that is for the House. Right now, they've got the House sitting at 174 Democrats, Republicans 227, with 34 remaining toss-ups in the House. So even if all the toss-ups go blue, Republicans still hold a large majority in the House, according to Real Clear Politics. Rumor has it that if Democrats lose the majority, not only does Nancy Pelosi lose her House Speaker's role, the rumor is she's going to resign, not just give up leadership in the Democratic Party. She's going to flat resign her House membership, which means that the governor of the state of California gets to appoint her replacement. So, or no, I'm sorry, House. That goes to a special election, and of course, then she's from San Francisco. So we're not going to get anybody pro-gun out of there, I don't think, but we can always hope. Let's get Chris Cheng to run. He's from that area.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Let me get up a comment here real quick. Gerald, going back to the comment about Democrats, government needs the people's money. The people's money is all what all the socialists loved the most. Well, that's the money is power, and the more money the government has, the more money the socialists believe they have, and that means the more power they have. So, yeah.
Yep, definitely.
All right, I got two more election stories I want to talk about today. In Oregon, there's two elections that have something to do with guns. Of course, there's Measure 114 that would make it nearly impossible to get for a new gun owner to become a new gun owner, and that's all indications are that's a very tight race. And then there are two counties. There are already three that have voted to do this, and there are two more counties today that are voting in Oregon to leave Oregon and join Idaho. That is the ultimate screw you to the state capital and to the liberals that run the west coast of Oregon. Is if you have 2/3 of the area of the state, not the population, the area of the state says, you know what, you loonies have gone so far that we want to go join Idaho where they're normal people.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw something like that in Virginia a couple of years back when, Governor Northam started coming down with all these gun laws on Virginians. And Virginia just really, the people just really rose up. It was amazing, and I was part of it. I was there, and they rose up and they said, no, this is not going to happen. And then they as soon as they could, they put a new governor in there. So I think you push the people far enough, and you're just asking for trouble. And these Democrats, they don't recognize that until it's too late for them. And I think it's a beautiful thing, because I like watching them lose. And tonight I look forward to seeing some liberal tears on some of these networks.
Well, and you and I talked about this pre-show. It's already happening because you were watching a local station. I've got a local station up over here, and the exit polls are coming in. And as we were discussing earlier, the local stations are trying to put a positive spin on things, but the exit polls are looking really good for freedom, and that's concerning the local stations.
Yeah, well, I'm watching NBC, national news, and I during these times, during the polls and stuff, I like to watch the left-wing folks, because what they're doing is they're taking any statistics that they have, and they're trying to put them out there that favor them, so their viewers can get the warm and fuzzies. And then all they do is talk about abortion, how abortion is the big motivator, and when it's not really, it's not the big motivator, but they keep talking like it is, and always talking about Trump. It's all about Trump. They can't live without Trump. So what they're doing is they're making their viewers try to feel good, and at the same time, it's very interesting. Right now, tonight, you're watching the exit poll data come in, and they're reporting on the data. So what they're doing is they're trying to fluff up their viewers, but they're also being forced to give them the actual data. So they're hitting the wall, and they're having this kind of cognitive dissonance where they're trying to support their views, but the data coming in is literally the opposite of what they're trying to say. So I give it another hour or so, and they're going to start. I think they're going to start melting down.
Somewhat similar to the night Trump won the presidency, and I will still go to YouTube and go back to watch CNN and MSNBC video from that night when state after state after state came back going for Trump, and it slowly is dawning on these people, Hillary is not going to win. Yeah. And that's just, 6 years later, it's gold.
And then at the end, they started filling their diapers. I mean, they were crying and screaming and just losing their minds. And I was like, how are you people so stupid? You went along with all the nonsense and all the lies and all the stuff that they kept telling you. And the voters literally thought. I had a friend who was kind of left-winger at that time. He's definitely a left-winger, but he was kind of a friend. And he wanted to bet me a lot of money that Hillary would win. He was convinced. And, of course, I was like, I was not sure. But it was really interesting how convinced they were, and then all of a sudden they got hit with this decision that they just, like they never could have thought that it would be possible. But we knew all along Trump was a powerful candidate over Hillary Clinton. And I think what's happening tonight is they're not going to be quite as shocked tonight. I think I think they're going to be a little more prepared for this, but they're still not going to be very happy.
I would agree. Dan, I'm going to have you get your crystal ball out and get it good and polished up. It looks like 1 week from tonight, there's going to be a big announcement from the Trump camp. What does Dan Wos think? Is Donald Trump going to announce 1 week from today that, excuse me, that he's running for the presidency in 2024?
I absolutely think he's going to say that he is. I mean, he's been doing rallies up to this point. I think he's going to announce it because I was listening to Clay and Buck this morning. I've been listening to, talk radio all day today, and President Trump actually invited Clay and Buck to Mar-a-Lago next Tuesday. To be part of his announcement. He wouldn't ask these guys to go to Florida. You got one of them's in New York, one of them's in Tennessee. He wouldn't ask them to come to Florida and be part of his announcement if he wasn't, if he was gonna, say he's not running. He's gonna be running. I'm confident of that.
I've kicked around in my head. Maybe it's going to be that Junior is running and Dad is endorsing Junior or something to that effect. But of course I have next to no connection to the Trump organization, so I'm clueless. I do not, other than I don't have any more information than anybody else does. So
well, I've been following Trump since the late 80s. I've read his books. I understand how he thinks as a businessman, and he's got a lot of, number one, he's got a lot of unfinished business to take care of that he was unable to do. Number two, he's got some scores to settle, and I think that's going to be a big part of what motivates him to come back, which I don't mind. I'd like to see him go back in there and hold these people accountable for all the recklessness that they did.
Yeah, one of the things he ran on is we need to drain the swamp, and that's an unfinished job I'd love to see get finished.
Yeah.
We got one more story I want to cover here, and that is another election story. One of the things on the ballot today in Iowa is Iowa voters, and just reading this off of WHO13.com, Iowa voters will decide whether to add a right to keep and bear arms into the state constitution, a move that will make it more difficult to pass gun restrictions and easier to strike down existing gun laws. If the amendment passes, Iowa would join Alabama, Louisiana, and Missouri with constitutional language that requires courts to use what's called strict scrutiny when considering gun restrictions. That standard would make it very difficult for courts to uphold limits on gun possession, ownership, or use, such as future efforts to require more extensive background checks or outlaw some kinds of firearms. And what it also will do, and this is the push from the gun rights people in Iowa, they're saying the federal government is trying to do away with the Second Amendment. That's why we need a Second Amendment in Iowa as part of our Constitution. The only states that do not have a Second Amendment are New York, in their Constitution, are New York, New Jersey, Iowa, Hawaii, and I want to say California. And Iowa's trying to make theirs, so they do have one now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great, but we shouldn't have to do that. Iowa shouldn't even have to do that. We do have a thing called the Second Amendment, in the Bill of Rights, and so the idea that they have to do it is kind of a shame. But I'm glad they're doing it because the state laws in some of these states are just outrageous. Like we're talking about New York, But the good thing about New York, which is kind of similar, is that Judge Clarence Thomas just wrote in a thing in his decision called the historic tradition.
Yeah, and history, text, and tradition, yes.
Yeah, and I don't know that people recognize just how important that could be, because we have a lot of gun laws on the books right now, and I think it's just a matter of court cases that was start picking them off, start taking these states to court for some of these unconstitutional gun laws, and using historic tradition as the precedent. So, I think we're in a pretty good place. It's just now it's going to be a matter of lots of court cases and some time. It's going to take some time. Get ourselves back to a normal place where the Second Amendment is actually recognized.
And I want to get into, well, the broadcast software picked up one comment from Facebook. It didn't pick up any more. We're getting more comments in from Facebook. I want to read a few of those off, and then I want to get to a story that Dan wrote. But Gerald on Facebook says, going back to the Oregon stories, he lives in Oregon. He says, then I could live in Idaho and have the coast too. Well, no, the coast counties aren't the ones that are voting to leave Oregon. It's the inland counties that are doing that. And he also says Junior will be next, 2028. So, well, and I think DeSantis may have something to say about that too. DeSantis, I think. I'm sorry. Gerald says Douglas County does have coast. Well, okay. Very cool. That is something I wasn't aware of. I'm putting right now. I'm putting into the show notes on both the Facebook and the YouTube side. I'm putting a link to a story Dan wrote, and this is something that I've talked about last week and on Saturday on the Bullet, and that is this: ATF has an issue. You'd think if there was some place where it would be there would be guns would be secure, that they're not going to let guns get out to people that shouldn't have them. It would be the ATF, because the ATF is out. If you make a paperwork error and you're an FFL, you're going to lose your business. So obviously they're serious about the security of their guns. Well, it turns out that not so much. They're missing thousands of guns and gun pieces, and even after that, they did an audit, and it looks like there's still awful security around the guns that they're trying to destroy. And you wrote a piece on this, Dan. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, well, I got the article up now, so I'll give you some bullet points on it. The ATF confiscates about 23,000 guns per year in America, and that's from crimes and whatever, any number of reasons that the guns are confiscated. And then they're supposed to keep them secured, they're supposed to keep them secured before they get destroyed. Don't get me wrong, I'm not in favor of any of this, but this is their policy. They created a branch called the National Disposal Branch, or the NDB, and that's the branch that destroys the firearms. So, in the meantime, these guns are supposed to be secured, but there's a whole bunch of things that they were doing where the Attorney General's office found security failures, and what they did was they looked at actual surveillance cameras footage, and they saw that they were putting guns on top of vaults instead of inside them. They were leaving keys laying around. Exterior doors were being propped open. People were not signing in and out like they should. So it was very sloppy the way the way this facility was being run, where all these guns that were confiscated were being stored. So what happens is you get this clown. His name is Christopher Lee Yates, and he starts stealing guns and selling them. So he's stealing guns that the ATF has confiscated, and he's selling them for his own profit. He gets arrested, sentenced to 14 years in jail. And then, ironically, the ATF publishes a flyer called Loss Prevention of Firearms Retailers. So what they're doing is they're putting out this flyer to instruct, FFLs, gun shops, how to properly handle their firearms so they don't, get stolen And this is the ATF instructing them with this flyer saying you got to lock your display cases, you got to show one customer at a time to customers, or one gun at a time to customers. You got to secure the firearms when the store is closed. You got to use cable trigger guards, divide the firearms responsibly, and require two-party inventories and ensure employee handling. All sorts of stuff that they create to instruct, when at the same time their own employees are stealing guns from their facility and selling them out the back door. It's hysterical. If it wasn't, it would be hysterical if it wasn't so true. Unfortunately, this is what's happening at the ATF. So, people are not a fan of the ATF.
And another bit of irony to this is the reason that security guard got caught was a routine traffic stop. He was speeding, got pulled over, and boy, there's all kinds of guns in your car here, dude. It's all right, I'm a security guard. What's going on with these guns? And that's how the whole thing gets opened up. If he wouldn't have been speeding, this might not have come to light. And there are thousands of guns and gun pieces missing from ATF. So
and people can read the article. They can get more information. They can read the entire article at AmmoLand. Just look up my name, Dan Wos, at AmmoLand. Go to the AmmoLand page. You can read this article. But I think it's just a fascinating story. It's such it shows the hypocrisy of these government organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as usual, man, we've run over time. But is there anything you want to plug on our way out the door, man?
GoodGunBadGuy.com. You can see my book series right above my shoulder here, the Good Gun Bad Guy book series, and you can go to GoodGunBadGuy.com. That's GoodGunBadGuy.com. You can also check out my web show, The Loaded Mic, at LoadedMic.com. So, and thanks, Paul, for having me on the show. It's always fun.
Absolutely. I want to encourage everybody, come join me 5 p.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow's normally Dan's day, but Dan's filling in for Rob Morse today. And so Amanda Suffolk is coming in tomorrow, and we're going to be talking about the aftermath of the election, about real results, which we still, at 32 minutes after the hour, just don't have yet. We will have results tomorrow, hopefully from the entire country, and we'll be able to give a clearer picture of what's going on. So come join me 5 p.m. tomorrow. We'll tell you what's going on with your gun rights and what's going on with the election. Until then, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. And, oops, hang on. I got to get this in on the way out the door because this is a great comment. Gun websites, if they couldn't tell that many guns were missing from their trace, if they couldn't tell that many guns were missing, then their tracing must not work. First gun they retraced would have alerted them the guns already having been in their system.
Oh, let me add one more thing.
Yeah,
because that reminds me. One more thing. The guns that this guy was stealing were actually labeled destroyed. So they were already labeled destroyed, but they weren't actually destroyed. Just another little tidbit.
Yeah. So there you go. A good point, Pete, over at gun websites. And so when these guns show up at crime scenes and the ATF gets them, oops, that one was already destroyed? Yeah.
Right.
All right, everybody. That does do it for us today. Please do come join me 5 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. Amanda Suffolk will be here. We'll discuss everything again, and we'll talk with you then.